Now let's do a little foreign policy. We're going to talk to Derrick Crowe. He's an Afghan specialist for Brave New Films. Derrick, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks. Glad to be on.
Great to have you here. Did you guys talk to former Deputy United Nations Envoy Galbraiths about the situation in Afghanistan?
Yes, we did. About 2 days ago, I talked to him by Skype. He was in Norway, and we talked to him about President Karzai's really erratic behavior over the last week or two. Your viewers probably know that Karzai has tried recently to blame the United States for the election corruption that was so egregious last year. And in the course of the few days after that, he also suggested that if he kept being pushed by the international community, he might have to join the Taliban. And now he's trying to walk that back. But Mr. Galbraiths had some very strong words for him. He described him as emotional and erratic. Galbraiths was actually named by Karzai as the person who perpetrated the fraud, which is just incredible because we know that Karzai had about 1 million votes that just appeared in the ballot boxes for him through corrupt election processes. So it was pretty incredible. Mr. Galbraiths had some pretty strong words.
Now, the idea that Galbraiths or the United States would rig the election in favor of Karzai and give him 1 million extra votes, and that then Karzai would be mad about that, is so comical that we don't really need to address it. But it does, lead to the question of, well, what is going on with Karzai? I mean, threatening to join the Taliban, etc. Now, I think that this is a real open question, but Galbraiths has a theory on that. You want to let us know what his interesting theory on it is?
Yeah, I mean, in the course of the interview, it was kind of shocking, actually. He said that there have been reports that Karzai was a frequent user of Afghanistan's most profitable export. And we know that Afghanistan doesn't have much of an export market, and he's referring to opium and heroin. And he said the same thing on MSNBC the same day. So it was a pretty shocking allegation. But that's the sensational part. But Galbraiths also raised some much more serious issues that bode much more badly for the United States' strategy in Afghanistan, mainly that we need a legitimate partner in Afghanistan, and we don't have one.
Derrick, I want to get back to that issue in a second. Of course, that's the most important issue. But here, in the context of this discussion, I don't know who to believe, really, because on the one hand, okay, Karzai is acting a little erratic, but I mean, whenever somebody opposes us, we always accuse them of being erratic. And in Vietnam, we did a very similar, charges against leadership we didn't like there and accused them of being high, right? So, and Galbraiths has the situation in Kurdish territory in Iraq when he was there, very, controversial, where he wound up with some oil mines or oil fields. It's funny how that worked out. So I don't know who to trust here, Derrick.
Well, I think the most important thing here, and that's why I brought up the legitimacy thing, is that was a very shocking statement, and he said it twice in one day, right? So, and there had been some kind of debate over where, in previous interviews he had said something similar, but national security bloggers who he said it to, I think Spencer Ackerman, had mentioned that he thought it was a joke initially, right? But in the 2 interviews he gave day before yesterday, one with me for Rethink Afghanistan and one for MSNBC, it was a flat-out accusation from my read on it. He was saying that, Chuck Todd pressed him on it a little bit, and he said, no, there have been reports to that effect that Karzai uses drugs. But that's really sensational, and that's getting a lot of the headlines, and folks have been saying, who do you trust, right? But the issues that Galbraiths brought up that were the more serious issues for us, I mean, the kind of ad hominem dismissal of them, because we find him, because some folks find him to be not credible because of the situation in Kurdistan. I don't think you can get around those larger issues he brought up that really complicate any sort of effort in Afghanistan based on counterinsurgency.
So, Derrick, how does this thing play out? And we're talking to Derrick Crowe from Rethink Afghanistan. Is the U.S. going to bring someone else in? How the hell would we do that? I don't
think that that's even remotely an option, right? Because the president has worked so hard, right, to avoid anything that remotely sounds like an Afghanistan, or a Vietnam analogy. he flat out refuted that idea in his West Point speech. But if the U.S. tries to engineer the replacement of this person who, in that same West Point speech, Obama said something he didn't have to say, and that was that, or I'm sorry, this was actually in the State of the Union. He said that Karzai was the legitimately elected leader of the country of Afghanistan. And in one way, he was boxed into saying that because he knows as well as everyone else that's been following the issue that the counterinsurgency strategy is based on having a legitimate partner. He had a real opportunity there, so much so that Bill O'Reilly even said that if he decided to say that the election was illegitimate and that means we have to leave, that Bill O'Reilly would support the president in that decision. But the president decided to go all in and say, no, we're staying. And in order to do that, he had to say that the president of Afghanistan was legitimate. So if he, in trying to beat back those Vietnam analogies, if the president then comes back around and says, well, we have to get rid of Karzai, that's the problem, that we just replace him with some other person that will align with our interests more closely, all of those analogies are back on the table. And for good reason. The fact is that the president has backed this as the legitimate leader of Afghanistan. And the problem's not that necessarily, if we just replace one warlord or one drug-running narco leader with another, that we can get our way in Afghanistan. The problem is that from the year 2001, when we allowed our stamp to be put on a process that picked from Karzai on down in the government the most corrupt and vicious people to become the head of that government, we're reaping what we've sowed for the last 9 years. And the problem is that we've decided, instead of looking to our specific interests, which is the pursuit of al-Qaeda, which Petraeus has told us isn't in Afghanistan anymore, to morph into this much larger mission creep where we need a legitimate partner. One doesn't exist, and just lopping off the top of this corrupt system and putting a new figurehead on the top of it isn't going to solve the problem. The problem is, sorry, go right ahead. I didn't mean to filibuster.
That's okay. In Afghanistan, when you're looking for leadership, you're not going to find a lot of Mother Teresas. A leader in Afghanistan was usually a warlord, and I don't use that in a bad way. It's just that's the situation at hand in Afghanistan, and the biggest export they have is heroin and opium, and so obviously that's going to lead create a lot of financial incentive for guys that rise to leadership that do business in a place we would rather not have them do. So all this added up to, Matt Ho the other day sent me an article from, I think it was The Guardian in 06 or 07, where one of our military leaders said, look, we've got a new resurgent campaign against the Taliban in Afghanistan, and we should drive them from Afghanistan in about a year.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that hasn't really happened, has it? So what do we do, Derrick? As to wrap this up, in this mess that we're in, if you're Obama, what do you do? What do you just all of a sudden go, okay, I don't know, that guy's high. He's on drugs. I can't deal with him. I got to go?
Well, I think what he's got to do is look at something else that Matt said in the last week, was that, there are areas in Afghanistan, Nuristan, for example, where we have pulled troops out of. And lo and behold, those areas have begun to stabilize. And the insurgent group that operates in that area, it's not necessarily Taliban, it's another allied group, has gone to Kabul with a 15-point peace plan, and there's a lot of problems with that plan. But the fact is that runs completely counter to the argument that we're hearing. And we know that over the last few years, as we've increased troops, the number of people that our generals and our intel people are telling us are actually in the insurgency, the increase has been above and beyond that. It's the more troops we add in, we end up serving as a recruiting tool for the Taliban. So the president's really got to take a step back here, and it's going to be extremely politically difficult. What Galbraiths called for was an immediate halt to any further troop increases and the rapid withdrawal of troops that have been added so far this year. And I think that that's probably the best step right now, because we're talking about going into Kandahar in the next couple of months. And Kandahar is the ideological heart of the Taliban. And if there was a place in Afghanistan where adding more troops was going to set fuel to the fire for the insurgency, it's Kandahar. So I think we've really got to not only rethink what we've done so far, but rethink what we're planning to do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as you explained that, Derrick, I thought, not going to happen. I mean, there's no way Obama says, oh, you know what, Galbraiths was right, Rethink Afghanistan is right. I've rethought it. and we're going to pull out before the Kandahar operation. Inconceivable.
Well, I gotta say that might be a hard pull, right? But going forward, I think with the idea that we're going to shove more troops in there and that we're going to somehow break the back of the Taliban by doing the thing that we know from our own military experts has been commensurate with a massive increase in recruiting by the Taliban. I mean, the president might be dead set on doing it, but that doesn't make it an effective strategy, obviously. If he continues to add more troops in areas where people don't want us, and by the way, bring in the forces of an Afghan government that are largely viewed as outsiders by the locals, I mean, that's just a recipe for continued insurgency and, by the way, more civilian casualties that we don't want on our conscience.
I hear you. I think that ultimately what's going to wind up here is in about a year and a half, Obama's going to have to revisit this decision, realistically speaking. And he's going to have to say, all right, you know what, either I'm just going to run my administration into the ground in Afghanistan over and over and over again because I think I'm awesome and I can solve unsolvable problems. Or he's going to say, okay, no mas, you guys were right. Adding more troops doesn't help in Afghanistan. It hurts. But I don't think we're going to come to that point, unfortunately. I mean, until a year and a half. But you guys have to keep pushing forward on it. And certainly Rethink Afghanistan is. So, Derrick, we really appreciate you coming on the Young Turks to talk to us about it.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's great.